Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics. Our program spotlights people in our community who are involved in activities intended to promote good human relations. I am Michael Keller, the chair of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission and your host. The commission is a city board that seeks to promote equal opportunity and to eliminate discrimination. My guests today are Yvola Peters, who is the Special Assistant for Minority Affairs for the County Executive of Anne Arundel County, and Barbara Maginy, who is the chair of the Human Relations Commission of Anne Arundel County. Barbara and Yvola, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yvola, I'm going to start with you. What are your responsibilities as the Special Assistant for Minority Affairs for the County Executive? What do you do?
Well, the position focuses on minority issues, and I also serve as the Human Relations Officer for the county. Yeah. So in general, I reach out to the minority community, identify issues that are being focused on. For example, right now, we are focusing on the disparity in education of minority students. And I also serve as staff to the Human Relations Commission and also receive complaints and do investigations.
A lot of your, or at least some of your work has to do with relating to minority businesses. Is that correct?
Well, indirectly.
Okay.
Because
tell us how that
works.
We have a
Minority Business Enterprise Program, Joanne Jackson, okay. And that position is under the Central Services. And so it's her responsibility basically to work with minority businesses and to connect those minority businesses to opportunities in the county. And she does a lot of technical assistance with minority businesses. So I might communicate with her on various issues, but she's the focus point for minority business.
Okay, how about minority recruitment and hiring?
Well, minority recruitment and hiring through personnel, we stay in close communications to monitor the issue around how many minorities there are. And I should also mention that we have a Hispanic liaison person who is Maria Casasco, and we work very closely together, but she focuses on the Hispanic population. However, if there are some discrimination complaints and they come into my office, then Maria, of course, can do interpretation and really walk through the process if there are persons who are not secure within going through that process. So that's the focus, and she also does the grants program. Okay. Now, as Special Assistant for Minority Affairs, I also sit on various boards for the county executive. The Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families, I chair that board. I sit on the Department of Social Services board and the Mental Health as the county executive representative, and also on the school board nominating commission.
How about the area of education? Do you have anything to say about that?
Well, in education, as you know, we have there is a specific focus that the board has, which came out of a complaint that was filed with the NAACP and some citizens and the Respect organization. And we call it the OCR, or the Office of Civil Rights. And it was an agreement that was signed between the NAACP, Respect, and the other parties and the school board in order to focus on removing the disparity within the minority students and the gap in academic achievement. So I work with that group. I specifically work on the academic achievement subcommittee
All right.
on that.
What does the Academic Achievement Subcommittee do?
Well, there are three subcommittees. One has to do with school safety. One has to do with community involvement and the academic achievement. Academic achievement, we look specifically at issues that are blocking the achievement of minority students. One of the things that we look at is well, let's say the teachers' expectations of students, how students are focused in special ed programs if there's a disparity there. So we look at specific things that impact upon the academic achievement of minority students.
One thing I can recall of that is that there, of course, as in other places as well, there is this gap between the achievement of, say, African American and Latino students and those students who are, say, white and or Asian in terms of their racial or ethnic identity. But I know that the NAACP has felt very, very strongly over the years that they not have separate standards. And there's some people say, well, maybe because these individuals come from handicapped backgrounds, that the level of expectation would be less. And the NAACP has taken the position saying no, that the same standard should be applied to all students. But of course, that creates a tremendous challenge for the school system. Are these issues that?
Well, yes, very much so. As I said before, one of the issues have to do with expectations of students.
Exactly.
And we know for a fact that if you have low expectations, you have low achievement.
Right.
So one of the things that we are working towards is to make sure that our children are held to high expectations and that we provide all of the resources to nurture them in order, because they are capable of succeeding. It's about what kind of support systems and encouragements and the different kinds of supplemental activities that must happen in order for the children to succeed. And Barbara McGinley, who is a educator, probably can tell you much more about it than I can.
I was just sitting here listening.
Okay.
I've been retired from the New York City Board of Education for over 20 years.
Oh.
And I get an educational and emotional rush when you start talking about education, particularly with respect to expectation level.
Okay.
Must be high. Every child can learn. Every child can learn something. The teacher's job is to unlock the learning modality of the child. How does this child learn? How does that child learn? And as long as I just say one more thing here.
No, keep it up. This is a great
I
conversation.
strongly support heterogeneous grouping. That's one of the topics.
What does that mean?
It means that children of varying or different ability levels can be grouped together for instruction. It could be language arts, it could be art, it could be math, it could be social studies. But when you mix those children together of different ability levels, the children at the lower end can aspire to move up. The children who are already up can mentor and come back and help the others in the classroom. It's been successful. We used it in New York many, many years ago. And I believe that it works. It's challenging for the group rather than have everybody floating along at the same level.
And that's one of the things that we are advocating for. I know the superintendent has, proposed various things. I know that there's some objection to it, but this heterogeneous grouping, as you call it, I think it's very important.
It doesn't hold the brighter child back.
Right.
The brighter child continues to grow. The child who's not growing as quickly continues to grow, and it's a mastery that can be accomplished by a classroom teacher if they support the concept and believe that it can work.
Housing is also an issue, I think, that you
Yes.
work with. Yvola, tell us about that.
Well, as you know, there is a disparity, of course, in economic levels. Unfortunately, you find the higher number of minorities in subsidized housing, and part of that, of course, goes back from discrimination and from lack of affordable housing. I work very closely with Mary Ellen Turner with the Housing Authority in working with resident councils. And I used to be the resident services worker at Woodside Gardens Apartments, which is not public housing, but is subsidized housing. And it is right next to public housing. And as a result of having that experience, we worked together and developed what was called the Newtown Community Development Corporation to provide services in that Newtown corridor that will help families be able to increase their income. And so we were fortunate enough to get a small amount of funds, but needed funds from the city, from their community development block grant, where we're now doing microenterprise training with expectation that by June 30th, 2012, we will have 5 workable, well-established microenterprises
Okay.
coming out of that.
Okay. Yeah, because the issue of housing, you talk about there's a difference between discrimination and affordability.
Yes.
I mean, discrimination obviously is where someone who applies for some type of housing is turned down because of discrimination on basis of one of the protected classifications. And it's against the law.
Yes.
Affordability is a whole different issue. There is no legal right to be able to rent a particular piece of property if you can't afford to pay that rent. Or there's no law that says that you have the right to live in a particular house if you cannot afford the purchase price for that house.
That's
So
right.
you've got a very clear difference.
clear.
But both very, very important public policy issues. We do not agree.
Yes,
Absolutely.
very much so, very much so. And I commend the city of Annapolis because in your fair housing, the discrimination because of source of income, because as we know that where landlords feel very hesitant about renting to persons with Section 8, and that that becomes an opportunity that's taken away because of their source of income. So the city of Annapolis is ahead of the game because the state has not been able to pass that.
That is correct. Yeah, and in fact, the commission did have several cases this past year dealing just with that, and I'm happy to report that as a result of that, that the Realtors Association has embarked in a campaign to educate the realtors who sell property in the city of Annapolis
Yes.
and who rent property in the city of Annapolis about that requirement. The city of Annapolis is one of only a handful of jurisdictions in the state that have such laws. The others being Montgomery County, Howard County, and the city of Frederick. So,
Wasn't there a gentleman at the ACDS presentation from the Realtors Board who
Yes.
mentioned the very thing in terms of dissemination of information and letting people know exactly what could be done and what could not be done, what was legal, what was not legal. So it's coming forward slowly, but moving still.
And if I can just explain, of course, ACDS is the Arundel Community Development Services, and they are the agency that administers the federal housing fund for the county. And they are responsible for the impediment analysis, that's for fair housing. And instead of doing just even though it was done by the county, there's a regional study. Anne Arundel County is part of that Baltimore region. And of course, our impediment study was done. And one of the things, unfortunately, in Anne Arundel County, we don't have an anti-discrimination, a non-discrimination law, and therefore we don't have a fair housing law either, in which Barbara will probably talk more about that.
And that's a good segue to our break. And when we return from our break, we'll be talking with Barbara McGinley about the work of the Human Relations Commission of Anne Arundel County.
Hi, I'm Annapolis Mayor Josh Cohen, and I want to tell you about a new free way for you to enjoy downtown Annapolis, our unique shops, our dining, our entertainment, and our historic maritime charm.
Did you know that Annapolis has a new circulator trolley that will shuttle you free from one end of the central business district to the other? Well, after parking at Knighton or Park Place Garage for just $5 a day, you can get on the circulator by simply raising your hand anywhere along the route and see what downtown Annapolis has to offer. For more information, go to annapolis.gov and click on circulator.
We're talking today with Yvola Peters, the Special Assistant for Minority Affairs for the Office of the County Executive of Anne Arundel County, and Barbara McGinley, who is the Chair of the Human Relations Commission of Anne Arundel County. Barbara, tell us about the responsibilities of the Human Relations Commission. Why do you exist?
The Human Relations Commission was reestablished by executive order by County Executive John R. Leopold, I believe in
2008.
In 2008. We are an appointed volunteer body who meet monthly. We have several committees that are very active. We have a legislative committee. We have a communications committee, external and internal complaint committees, and we're available to discuss issues that we hear about from neighbors, from business people. We are able to make recommendations, and we have a marvelous exchange of information because a great deal of information comes into this office. And when we have our meetings, we're all looking forward to the dissemination and sharing of information because there is so much going on. And even though we're volunteers, most of the members work at some professional level. And Yvola is just marvelous in bringing us information and saying, well, here now. She's already decided what she's going to do. And she says, now, what would you like to do with this? And we have an exchange, and it's a learning experience. It's a learning experience every time we have a meeting. And we're just grateful because the office is so sharing of information that comes in. Our meetings are open. We've had visitors come in. We've had complainants come in to air their concerns. And our biggest thing right now, Yvola mentioned it, is the fact that Anne Arundel County does not have its own anti-discrimination law, which means that the services this office can provide are seriously diminished because our services are limited. We can offer mediation, we can offer conciliation, we can bring the parties together, we can make referrals to the State Commission on Civil Rights now. I believe the name was changed.
Yes.
The Maryland Commission on Civil Rights. It had been Human Rights. Or we can make referrals to HUD and EEOC. Well, when a complainant comes in and we say, this is what we can do, we're bound to offer them alternatives. And more often than not, it's, well, look, thanks so much. but I think we better go to the state level, or I think we better go to the federal level. This diminishes our effectiveness because we can't subpoena records. We can't ask to see work records or attendance records or who did you hire last. But we're working on it. We met with County Executive Leopold in the spring of 2010. He said, go out and get me some feedback. Let me know what the business community has to say. Well, to our surprise, most people didn't even know there was no anti-discrimination law and enforcement power for this county. And of the 20-some odd counties in the state, I believe Anne Arundel County is 5th or 6th in population without legislative enforcement powers. So we'll be presenting our findings to the county executive with our annual report very soon. Our committees have met with the police department in terms of recruitment, and we're here to help. What can we do to help you? Committee has also met with the fire department. We're here to help you. They've been most cooperative with their human resources officers in sharing information in terms of how they advertise, who applies, what are the delimiting factors that keep X number of people who apply from making it to the end and finally being hired. And we've established very good rapport with the police department, the fire department, agencies that have come looking for information. Last thing I would say is that time is a factor. It takes EEOC an average of 181 days to resolve a case, if not longer. It takes Maryland, the state, equally as long, if not longer. With local legislative enforcement powers, you have people who are here who know the area, know the culture, know the community, and know the facts surrounding it, and may have easier access to information rather than someone who's totally unfamiliar with the area, with the problem, or with the community. So we're hoping that the county will consider legislative authority and sliding Title 20, which is the Maryland state law that we follow anyway, which is already on the books, sliding that over and making it applicable to Anne Arundel County. And we're committed to seeing that through. A question that has come up frequently has been cost effectiveness. In these tight budgetary times, money is indeed an issue, but we have 2 staff people ready, willing, and able to begin, and we have a number of volunteers on the commission who would be trained to do investigations. So that's about where we are now, and we're looking forward to a very active 2012 year.
Okay. What you're describing is very similar to the Annapolis Human Relations Commission. The only difference is that we do have enforcement authority in the area of fair housing,
Yes.
which we've actually used. They actually used that power one time,
Yes.
in the history of the commission. One of the things that you find, though, let me throw this out as just an issue, and talking as chair of the Human Relations Commission, there's an old saying, don't ask for something, you may get it. One thing that we found was that in the one case in which we did use our full range of authority, in the fair housing case, the amount of work was absolutely enormous. And we've got a very dedicated staff liaison, but that person has other very pressing responsibilities, and so it really, most of the work fell in the hands of the commissioners.
A very valid point for consideration, but looking at it more globally, you're providing a service to the people of Anne Arundel County that they deserve, and that is the timely end to whatever their complaint might be. And I don't think it would necessarily significantly increase the number of complaints. Evola can tell you how many come into the office.
I would agree with you.
Most people said, wouldn't matter to me.
I think one thing too, having a law, I think deters some issues, so that part of our responsibility in the commission, of course, would be educating the public about the laws. Now, even today, when we get a complaint of a person who feels that they've been discriminated against, and we have to make the referral to the state or to the EEOC, it takes quite a while before they get an investigator signed to them. We are fortunate in the county in that the county's always had a human relations officer, and of course that's the role I fulfill. When the county executive came in and we expanded the office in terms of minority affairs, then we have another person, Janelka Stafford. Of course, both of us have been trained in investigations. Right now, when we do certain investigations, and then if the, once we say to the complainant that we don't have any enforcement powers, so the respondent may or may not cooperate. Well, in those cases where the respondents have been willing to cooperate, and we've gone on to do the investigation, then of course they can, if they are not satisfied with our findings, they could, go to the external committee of the Human Relations Commission. Also, if we have done some things and we find that there's something that needs more enforcement than we can, the state has been very receptive because they will start counting the date from the time that they file with us, which means that that's within their 180 days from the incident. And then they will pick it up from there. We'll give them the information that we've received and their pursuit from there. So we've had some very good cooperation, but we think that by being local, it will cut the amount of time involved, and therefore, regardless of what the finding is or what the final conclusion, we think that, it will be a good thing for everybody involved, both the complainant and the respondent.
Very often, the complainant may feel more comfortable dealing and talking with people locally because they're familiar with the community, as I mentioned before. And that can be helpful in terms of providing a service.
What activities has the Human Relations Commission of Anne Arundel County taken up in the past couple of years, Barbara, during the period you've been chair that you're really most proud of, looking back over the time that you've served as their leader?
We had a very successful fair housing seminar, open house as it were, a few years ago. I'm most excited about obtaining legislative authority. We made a presentation at the Baltimore-Washington corridor mixer at BWI Airport, and we were able to hand out information. We've been down to Shady Side to make a presentation, and a couple of the commissioners have met with county councilmen. I spoke at a public hearing 2 or 3 weeks ago and mentioned it. So it's a matter of getting the word out and just opening it up so that people know it's a resource that is here for you and it's a resource that's available. It also strongly supports some of the initiatives that have been taken by County Executive Leopold. And I enjoy that part of it because it is so open and it is so available. And these are things that make you feel proud and loyal when you are able to make a contribution in an area that needs the help and you support the people who put you there.
If some of our viewers are interested in getting in touch with either you, Yvola, as Special Assistant, you, Barbara, as the Chair of the Human Relations Commission, in terms of filing a complaint of discrimination, or for any other kind of information they would like to seek about your respective roles, what's the best way that they can reach you?
410-222-1234.
Okay, can you repeat that for our viewers?
410-222-1234, The office is at 44 Calvert Street on the fourth floor. Third floor.
Third floor.
And of course, you can be found on the AA County, Anne Arundel County website, which
Right.
is aacounty.org.
www.aacounty.org.
Right.
Thank you for viewing our program today, and please join us again on Annapolis Mosaics. If you would like more information about the Annapolis Human Relations Commission, just jot down the information that's on your screen. We can be reached at 410-263-7998 or by email at hrcommission@annapolis.gov. And do check out our page at the City of Annapolis website. Go to www.annapolis.gov, click on the Boards and Commissions icon at the home page, and you can scroll down to the Human Relations Commission page. And always remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "We have flown the air like birds and swum the seas like fishes, but have yet to learn the simple act of walking the earth as brothers and sisters."
Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara.
Oh,
Ebola.
it was very pleasant. Thank you so much.